Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last Learning Live of March. We are here with Darlene, and she not only loves flips and flaps and all things purple, but she loves to stitch. So she's going to give you some tips and tricks on stitching and have all kinds of fun with all things embroidery. So I'm going to just hand over to Darlene and she can take it away.
Hello, everyone, and hope you can hear me well. I'm so excited tonight for you to join me. So I am going to go from basics and then share my tips and tricks and show you some of the stitching items that I have done. And mostly tonight, I am concentrating on these types of cross stitch dies. I will talk about stitching dies in general, the difference between plain stitching and cross stitching. But let's start off with the basics of needles because we need needles to stitch. So welcome, everyone. I can see some of your comments. Sherry is there if I do miss anything. But let's start off with the first things that we need when it comes to stitching is the type of needles to use. The ones I like to use are the tapestry needles. And the reason for these type of needles, why I like them is, first of all, not sure if you can see that, but it has a big eye to thread your string, your skeins of strands in. Another thing about these needles is that it's not a pointy end. Yes, it's a little bit sharp, but not like most regular embroidery needles. It's very sharp. You can poke yourself and start bleeding. These are called blunt needles, so they're safer for cross stitching. There is a range of sizes. They range from 18 to 22. And basically what those numbers means, it's how long your needles are. For me, it depends on the project. Sometimes I like shorter needles. Sometimes I like longer needles. It really doesn't matter what size of needles you have. So these are my favorite ones are the DMC tapestry needles. It's the ones I have lots in because that way you can leave your colored strands in it without having to remove it and change it all the time. So yes, leaving DNA is not fun. So first thing is your needles, very, very important. Next thing is your embroidery thread. Usually when you grab your thread, they look like, let me grab one that's not wound up yet, something like, looks like this. This is called a skein, spelled S-K-E-I-N. And basically what it is, it's a strand that has 6 individual pieces to it. There is some skeins out there that has 1 or 2 strands. They're much thicker, but the ones I like to use are the 6 strands, and I'll explain the reason why for this. So let me move this for a second. When you buy a skein, they come looped up like this. I know when I'm lazy, I will just find the end piece and I'll just pull and cut as many as I want. I'm taking this purple as an example. How convenient it's purple. And I cut a strand. I would say don't cut too many. Don't cut a long strand because the thing is that you want to make sure you're not tiring your arm when you're going in and out of your stitching, whether it's cross stitch or you're stitching. I like to use a reasonable length. I just grab a bit knowing that this is workable. I wouldn't do like, let's say 1 meter, 2 meters long, and then you're pulling and pulling, just trying to get it through the loop. So just a small strand like this. I'm not sure how long this is. I can give you an approximate. Just give me a second. I'm going to fold this in half. Measure on my mat here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's about 20 inches long. You can go shorter, you can go longer. So depending on your projects, I will show you the difference between using 3 strand or 6 strands. If you are a cross stitcher and you use the Adia cloth, the fabric, normally recommended is 2 strands. But for a project like these, where is my circle? So I'm not sure if you can see this. The holes are much bigger that you can use more thread in it. And I will show you a comparison of a 3-strand project and a 6-strand project. So something like this, I've been using 6 strands. I feel like it fills up those holes much better. So in order to do that is you can use, so if you're using 6 strands, you take all of it and you thread this into your needle. The tricky part of getting this into your needle is that they do start to split. So I found my traveling case, my sewing piece here, and that it comes very handy to thread it. There's other ways that you can thread it, but this seems to be my easiest way is to go into your little sewing kit and grab your little threader. Oops, I'm dropping stuff. So I just looped it inside my threader, and then I am going to pull this through and slide my yarn through. So let me just pull and I can release. So, oops, this is an older piece. Oops, mine got tangled. So that is one way of threading it in. Unfortunately, my threader is sticky for some reason that I got stuck to the back. Let me try that again. Hold on. Another way you can do it is spreading them apart and threading a couple at a time. But
hey, Darlene.
Yes.
Sorry, we can only see your shadow.
Yeah, hold on. I'm just taking the tape off my threader here. It has a little piece of tape. I'm not sure how, but it's getting sticky and it's getting stuck to my threader. So there's different kinds of threader. I have this sewing one, and basically you're putting it inside the hole. I just found it in my, well, not really a first aid kit, but my sewing kit. And with these is because it's flexible, they go through your eye. So that's called an eye. This big piece, this hole here is called an eye. And it helps you thread this string. Well, I'm having difficulties right now. Give me a second. It's supposed to help you thread this, but I find it's not going through. Okay, so forget this because it's not going in right now. It keeps sticking. I am going to do it the old-fashioned way and just slide this in. So it goes in, into the eyepiece and all the way through. So there are 2 ways that you can cross stitch with this. I like to just keep it as 6, my full 6 strands, and then holding it down or taping it down behind. I know some designers out there will, let's say if you want to use 6 strands, they will just take 3, fold it in half, and then do it that way. How do you tear these apart? So first things you have to do is, because it splits 6, recommended is to take at least 2 at a time. So if you find 2, grab 2, and I just hold the bottom together and I just yank 2 out, slide it down. It should come smoothly. So here's 2 strands. I normally don't do more than 2 because I seem to have the worst luck when I grab more than 2 strands. So here is my single strand, and now I have 3 strands. So depending on your project, you could use 2 or 3. But here's how you would spread 3, and then of course now you have another set of 3 to use when you continue on. Yes, licking the thread. I would normally do that, but I don't think you wanted to see that on today's live. So here is just me splitting 3 and 3. So that's how I split it apart. So let me show you the difference of a 3-strand project and a 6-strand project. So here is, give me 2 seconds. My fingers are playing. Not sure. Let me see if I can find a colored cardstock because these ones are done in white. So here is a 3-strand project. So as you can see, the holes are more visible. Let me see if you can see that. See how you can see more of the holes. You don't see a lot of yarn, but it's still very pretty that you can just leave it as is. If you want a fuller look, if you use 6 strands, so here is a 6-strand project. Oh, let me switch out this yellow. Here's another purple. It's darker so you can see it. So here's a 3-strand, and here is a 6-strand. So you can see the difference, how full the coverage is. So here's 3 strands of purple. You can see more of those holes. It's visible. The rainbow one is 6 strands. Let me put that closer. And it makes your heart fuller. So depending on your project and how thick you want your cross stitch to be, it's a personal choice. You could do 3 or 6. But all the projects I have tonight, I use mostly 6 because especially on the white cardstock, if you're using white as your base, it pops up more. As you can see, this yellow one here, it's on a white card base. I use 3 strands. You can still see it, but it doesn't pop up. It could be just the color, but I like that fullness of this rainbow. So here are just examples of 3 strand and a 6 strand. So as I said, there are different kinds of stitching dies, and tonight I am focusing more on the Lawn Fawn and the Elizabeth Craft. But just to give you a difference, so the Lawn Fawn one and Elizabeth Crafts, their newest release had cross stitch. And what cross stitch is that you're technically using these dots and making X's. Some of the patterns you could do back stitch or chain stitch, but these ones here are known for the cross stitch, just like how you would do it on a fabric, on a canvas, or it's using those X's, and I will show you how to do those. But Lawn Fawn had 3. They had the plain circle one. Right now I did die cut just so I could show you how I remove the paper out of this. So they had 3 different ones. The heart was, if I remember correctly, the heart one was on its own. Oh no, sorry, the rainbow. Yes, the rainbow was on its own, and the heart and the solid one were together. With this heart one, it did come with the hoop attached to it, and this was like their add-on, the rainbow. So Lawn Fawn came out with this. And then Elizabeth Crafts, I think they were thinking of the same thing. They came out with this set. And what I loved about Elizabeth Craft is that their stitching part was separate. So you can put this on your base page. You can put it on your card directly without using a hoop. And I like how you can change the shape. So let's say if you don't want circle, I could die cut this on a square or a rectangle. So a little bit different. The counted part is a little bit bigger than Lawn Fawn. So when you're counting stitches, Elizabeth Craft was a little bit bigger. This one had a smaller, sorry, you can't see it because my paper's there, but it had less stitch area. So two different ones, but they work the same way. So these are the cross stitch dies. In this field, they call it all stitching dies, but I want to show you that these are cross stitch because you are making X's, but you can make also back stitch or chain stitch. But let me show you, where did I put it? The difference. So 2 other companies that does stitching dies is Spellbinders as well as Crafter's Companion. They are more of this single type stitch. And what I mean by that, it's all straight. So you're doing back stitches all the way around. So there's no X's. You are following their pattern and filling it up, but this is a Spellbinders one. So this is called their stitching die. And this is Crafter's Companion, which is also their stitching die, but it's straight stitching. So depending on what you like for stitching, I would have to say these ones are much easier than doing the cross stitch, but the cross stitch is a lot more fun, and I can show you why I think they're more fun when I show you my examples. So 2 different kinds of stitching dies. Is everyone doing okay? Just wanted to share that there is different kinds of stitching dies out there. They do call it all stitch dies, stitching dies, but there is different ways of stitching them. So those were 4 different companies that are introducing their stitching dies. The nice thing about, well, let's go through this first. So the tricky thing about die cutting these are the many holes on them. Okay, I know some people, stitching is a hot trend, and if you love stitching, I'm gonna just plug it in there, but Spellbinders has their advent calendar, the Stitchmas, and I'm excited for that one. But here is the Lawn Fawn one. As you can see that my paper is still stuck in there. If you look closely, all the little bits are in there. Depending on the thickness of your paper, some of them will fall out instantly. Some of them get stuck. So because my garbage is on the floor, I'm using this as my little pail. I am going to say this is your best friend. This is the tool-in-one from Spellbinders. I know Sizzix has their version. They all work great. But what I love about this is that this little brush here helps take out all the little bits in anything, whether it's your intricate dies, your stitching dies. It helps you take all those little pieces out. The one thing is that if your paper is stuck, I know our immediate thing to do is take our pokey tool and take that piece of paper out. But if you're die cutting this, my recommendation is leave it in there, take your tool and brush it on the metal piece. I am just hitting it really hard in the back of the metal piece. And as you can see, it's releasing all those little bits already. So that way I don't have to do this in 2 steps. I am trying to eliminate it and do it all in 1 step. I know if you have the Sizzix tool, they did have a little, I guess, a foam sheet that you can just place on the foam and do the same thing. I like it on my hand. I have more control. And I'm using these little bristles here and poking through those holes. So it works for any intricate dies. And look how well that releases all that. You might miss some, which is perfect when you take it out, which I'll show you in a second to do that. So for this one here, let me just show you quickly what I did. So I put it through my machine face down. I do have a big shot. I placed it down. I rolled it back and forth twice. So 1 set back and forth, another set back and forth. And then I turned it so the cutting will be on the top. The die, so this is the bottom, this is the top, the cutting part facing upwards, and I rolled it through my machine again. And I have to say that has been working for me. If you are having problems die cutting any intricate dies, especially these ones, they do have metal shim, a chrome plate that you can add to your sandwich, and it does help cut these intricate dies a lot better. So I just wanted to show you that. Here's all my bits. You know, there's a lot of bits, so it's nice to have a garbage close by. And I'm just looking, scrolling. So here you can see now white. That means I released a lot of them. You can tell I missed a lot on this part here. So I'm going to push down. And so what I do is I die cut a few, and then slowly, one by one, in front of my TV, I will just do all this, take it out, and then ready to go. So here I am. I do have a little bit left that's being stubborn now. And now I am going to slowly put my pokey tool through those holes to release the cardstock. It's like suctioned in here. So be careful you're not ripping it. But there you go. Oh, that took most of them out. So there, that one's really clean. See how fast that was? So this is you. This is a great tool. It takes out any, like I'm using it for this because these dots are stubborn sometimes. And as you can see, I have some black marks. I would just go in and just do this. And if it's still stubborn, that's when I take out my pokey tool. But if you have intricate dies, like, you know, Spellbinders with all those like flowers with holes, or if you're lawn fawn, there's all those little, what's it called? Those back plates they have. This die is amazing. So there you go. Pretty clean. There is a few. So I would just slowly go through and run. And what I do is I have a stack of them. So you can tell I was busy. And that way I don't have to die cut every time I want to do something. I do a variety of colors. So I have some craft, some white, some black, and I just keep a stash. So this Ziploc is full of the solid ones. I have another Ziploc with all the rainbows. And then, of course, one with all the hearts. And that way I have it on the go. I can bring it in the car, bring it to work, and do it at lunch, which sometimes I'm too busy doing other things. And I did the same thing for Elizabeth Crafts. Because her surface is a little bit bigger, I did keep hers in a separate Ziploc, even though they look similar. Her holes are equal sizing. Let me just take one for comparison. I should have left these Ziplocs open. So here is a little comparison where, oh, let me grab my colored cardstock. So this is the Elizabeth Craft one. So I did it on circle, but because it's on its own, you could do it in the middle here and stitch it up. But it is just a tad bigger in size, and I feel like the circles are a smidge bigger, but it really doesn't matter. But let's just do a little comparison. So not a big difference, but when I was counting the holes, she goes up further up than Lawn Fawn does, but similar, same thing, and fun to craft. So this is me with all my little Ziplocs with them ready to go. So would you like to see some tips on stitching? Or, well, let me get you in the groove first. So one thing I do recommend is have a magnetic bowl or a bar. This is from my Nellie's Choice platform. I kept the foam and the magnet there, especially when you're stitching with multiple colors. It's a great thing to have somewhere to put your needles because they roll off, and Matt wonders why I need like 3 of these is because I keep losing my needles. So it's a great way to just have something magnetic where you could just plop your needles on. I feel like this magnet is really strong. It's a really good magnet. So I turn it around and I just put it in the back, and that way I can see it too. So that's ready to go. Let me start off with, since I showed you the hearts, let me show you some of the designs that you could do with the hearts, and then I'll show you how I like to cross stitch to maximize your thread and to keep it nice and tidy at the back. So with the heart, if you're using variegated strands of skeins, variegated means it's, let's see if I have one here. It's a floss that has multiple colors. So doesn't matter how you stitch it, you'll never get the same color. So this is variegated. And let me see if I can pull strand, that it has different shades. So as you can see, it starts off dark and then at light, and then goes a little medium. And then at some point it will go lighter. So these are variegated, which is really nice. I tend to use them often because you get those cool little looks. Oh, you want me to here's my backs. No judgment here. Yes, the push kit magnetic pin cushion works as well. Mine does have a lot of dies on it somewhere here. But here is my back. No judgment, you know. It's a way, some of them are more full, like this one here. Yes, my grandma used to do the same thing. I think it's what they are. Neat backs, right? But here are some ways. This is a variegated, so you can see the transition of the greens. So for this one here, you can notice that even if it's variegated, you can see that they are horizontal. So to change it up, I use variegated as well. Oh no, where's my other variegated? This is not variegated. It's somewhere in this pile. But there's one that I did a different direction. Probably somewhere else. I did it in a different direction, so then all your lines were going vertical. Here is one that I used 3 strands of color. So the nice thing about this is there's no right or wrong, and I find the heart and the rainbow really nice because you just stitch. You don't have to think about it. You can do any pattern, any color, change it up. So these 2 were variegated. Here was 3 strands. This one I decided to do 2, but I did diagonal. So here, and then of course we always have to do a rainbow. And if you know me, I love purple, so I needed to add those purples in my hearts, but here's a purple. So I find these were easy to stitch up because the shape was already there. You didn't have to think. And I'll show you some of the designs I've done with the simple ones. The rainbow one is also nice. So with the rainbow, it is very hard to do cross stitch on them. And the reason for that is I tried, but at some point there's not enough, your X's are not spaced out and it looked really weird. So the primary stitching is the back stitch on this one. And I did it rainbow because of rainbow, but you can do any color. And then one thing I learned from Sherry Moss, which is on their Lawn Fawn video, is the chain stitch. So for this one here, I did leave one empty so I could show you tonight. But before I show you chain stitch, I want to show you basic stitching just to get you in the stitching. So let me pull out I'm going to use black. So let's do an orange just because it's brighter and I think you can see it. So I have moved all my floss into Totally Tiffany. I'm addicted to Totally Tiffany. So I have all my bobby pins in my Totally Tiffany right now. So just to do that, so here I have 6 strands. I am going to slide my yarn, I keep calling it yarn, my strands inside my needle. Okay, so here I am. I'm using 6 strands, and the way you could do it, I hold it behind, but a trick that you can do. Let's do a heart. Yeah. A trick that you could do is tape it down. So you could start from bottom to top depending on how comfortable you are. And you would pull it all the way through and leave a strand. If you are scared that you're going to let go and it's gonna get pulled out, I would take a piece of tape. Just grab some washi tape. It's behind, and if you're using it for a card, you won't see it. So I'm going to just tape it where there's a lot of solid piece here, and that won't get covered. And after see how it's covering the holes, but once you start stitching, you can remove that because it's not going to go anywhere. So right now I do have it there, but as I stitch, you'll notice that I can peel it off because it won't go anywhere. So I am starting on this first line. I'm not sure if you can see, but this X here. So what I like to do is if I know I'm going all the way across, I would do all one direction first. So I start from the bottom, go up, go down. So that's one diagonal line. And then I go right beside it, go up and go down. Can you see that? Sorry, I need to tilt it so I can see the holes. There's 2 there, and I have 1 more that I can fit here. So I go up and then go down right over here. So I do all my stitching one direction. And the reason for that is I like it to look clean and neat. So if you look at let's see if I can show one. It's the rainbow one here. If you look closely, all my top stitch go in the diagonal this direction. So if you're looking at it, there's none of them that goes back and forth. They're all in one direction. It just looks clean when you do it. It really doesn't matter. I've been taught that way from my grandmother, and I remember she used to get mad at us and a little tap on the hand if we did it wrong. So mine always goes the same direction. So that's what I do here too. So I go one direction. Once I reach the end of the row, now I'm going back. So I always start from bottom to top. I pull. You don't want to pull too hard because you don't want to make your stitches too tight. And then you go the opposite direction and pull down. So there I've made an X, and I'll do the same thing. Go down and, go up and then go down. There you go. And go down. So let me see if I can focus that a little bit. See how all those X's, all those diagonals is in one direction? Sorry, is it focusing there? There you go. Just has a cleaner look, and you'll do the same thing. You go to the next line, depending on what your pattern is, if you're changing colors or not. So I would go to the next square, and I would do the same thing. Go up, go down, all the way across. So let me just do this quickly, and I'll bring it closer. And there you go. And because they are not pointy, they're blunt, I actually have my finger underneath to help me guide where the next hole is. That way I'm not turning back and forth. I just have my finger underneath. We're close to where the hole is, so then when the needle rubs against my hand, I know that's where it's going. One second. Oops, got twisted there. And then go down. So as you can see, I didn't start with the long strand. So then it's more comfortable when you're stitching. You're not pulling all the way over your shoulder because you have this long piece of thread. Work with a comfortable length. It makes it easier and makes it more enjoyable. So, and the reason I always say that is that because your hands do get tired when you're like, trying to pull it over your shoulder, but you also run into your strands getting knotted. And that's not the fun part, is when you have a knot and then you have to cut the piece off because you can't undo it because it's stuck. So if you work at a smaller length, then it's more, it's easier and less frustrating. See how I'm just doing a slow motion up and down without moving my wrist too much? Like my elbows right now is on the table, so you can see what I'm doing. But just like that. So this is a cross stitch. So I started it from the top, but I'll show you what I mean is now that I can take this washi tape, and because I've gone over it several times, it actually caught itself underneath, and now it's stable and won't come apart if you yank on it. So here is my orange. So let me finish this row quickly, almost done. I'll show you how I ended. So let's say your strand is almost done, or it's getting to the short end. The way I like to do is always finish at the back. So I'm putting it at the back, I'm finishing at the back. I don't tie knots in any of my projects so it doesn't become bulky. What I like to do, hold on, just reading comments here. That's right. Especially if you're somewhere and you're trying to stitch, you don't want to poke someone. So the one thing I like to do is you take the needle and you see how there's all these bumps. This is your back. The X's are the front. These bumps are the back. What I like to do is I put my needle underneath those bumps. I do one at a time because it is paper. I don't want to yank it too much. And I just pull it through those bumps. So I'm just going on the top surface of the bump. It's not going underneath, just on those top surface. 2 or 3 bumps is usually good just to secure it. And because you're taping this down to your project, nothing's going to happen. So once that is secure, I'll take my scissors, snip it, and that just holds it in place and it keeps it nice and clean. And then you can continue on. So that is the X. So let's show you a simple way of doing the rainbow. If you're not, I have to say backstitch is the easiest. Now, I was showing you all the hearts and now I can't find any of my hearts. Oh, here's a rainbow. So with the rainbow, it's one of the easiest stitch, and if you can do the stitch, you can do any of the Spellbinders or the Crafter's Companion one. I am going to skip the first line because orange is already here. Rainbow for me needs to be in order. So this rainbow is done with each arch. So orange is the second one here. I would do the same thing. If you're not comfortable in holding it down and working it, then tape in. This one's perfect because it has a longer one. But let's say I am, I'm going to overcome my fear and not tape it. What I do is I just hold it with my finger. So it's right behind and I start working. So you go through the first hole, come upwards, second hole, go down, and then go to the next empty hole, go up, and then go down on the hole that you just did. So you're going back down. This is called the back stitch. So once again, you go, let me see if I can go higher here without shaking. So go up, empty hole, go down on the hole that you just used. So you're going back against yourself. And of course, I pulled my needle out. Give me a second.
Darlene, while you're rethreading your needle,
Yes.
could you please talk a little bit about what kind of paper you're using? Donna
Okay.
is asking if you're using sturdy, heavy paper or what kind of paper.
Okay, so I have different papers here because I was trying to see how well this die would work. Like any intricate die, the thicker your paper, the more heavyweight your paper is, it's going to be much harder. So my white ones were, some of my white ones were Nina, the 80-pound one, and some of them were our new Cougar ones. I wanted to see the difference. In comparison, no difference at all. They cut like butter. I tried Gina K, the craft. That one was a little bit tougher, I found. It was thicker. So I had a harder time going through. It depends on paper because I tried, so the craft one, I'm assuming it's thicker because I tried, what was it called? Sandy Beach, because I wanted that nice canvas type look to it. I don't think I have any Sandy Beach left. That one cut like butter. So it really depends on the thickness of it. I did try the Gina K black one. I did have a hard time. I did have to use the metal shim to go through, but I did the My Colors black and I bought a whole bunch because it cut through butter, and that's the one I did with you tonight. So it came off easily and it's pretty thick. So I've tried a few, but I would say don't go to 110. Like it's going to be really hard and you're going to be frustrated and you're probably going to do one and say, I give up. I would stay around the 80 to 95. So either My Colors or the smooth, My Colors. Basil has some that are smooth but not heavy stock that we carry, just a random few colors. That works. Gina's regular ones work really well. Like any of her heavyweight ones, like her white, her ivory, or craft, you might struggle a little bit. But if you're staying with her, I guess she calls it medium weight, those are perfect. But I've been loving the My Colors. They've been cutting like butter. Besides white with Nina or Cougar, it's pretty good. You might have to try it a few times in your machine and see how it does. You might have to roll it through a couple times just to test it out. But I am using my old Big Shot and it's been good. So let me just finish here. I hope that answers your question. And honestly, because you're not pulling so hard on this paper, you don't have to go too heavy weight. And you also have to think that depending on how much you're stitching on here, it's putting weight on it because of all the strands that you're using, plus the paper. And then if you're putting it on a card, it does build up weight as well. And of course, layers. So if you're mailing it, it might become overweight. So just things to factor in. But I did try a few papers to see what worked and what didn't work. And I'm happy with the ones that I've worked with. So here I'm just doing a simple stitch back and forth. And that will create, so I'm going to just stop it here because you don't need to see me do that. And it's very simple. So something like this or something like that have the same stitches and it's quick and easy. You just have to go one direction and go all the way around to fill the pattern. So that was Rainbow Stitch. But if you like the challenge, which I needed the challenge, this chain stitch was pretty cool as well. So it has the same amount of colors because you're using the same arches, but look how that one is compared to the full one. So depending on your look, you might like the full one, the chain stitch. It does have a nice chain, as the name is. It has that nice look to it too. But see how the difference is? Both pretty cool. So this one here, it's pretty easy. It's not as hard. It's just more finicky. I did have to practice a few times and get comfortable before I was able to do it. So let me show you this one. So I always start at the bottom And for this one, you need to start at the bottom for you to do that continuous chain. So I just need to make sure I have enough at the back. So once again, you can tape it down or hold it down. I am just going to hold it. So this one here is you put it through the first hole. I'm going to stand so that way you can see it. First hole, you go down the first hole and you do not pull it all the way through, because if you do, this is what's going to happen. You're going to lose it. So with the chain stitch, so once again, I'm just holding it, put it through the same hole, but don't pull it all the way through. You're going to leave a little chain hanging like this. So I go a little bit smaller because that way if it's twisted, it will move. So you want a little ball like that. So once you have that opening, you need to find the next hole right over here. See that hole where my needle's pointing to? This hole, but you need to come through the bottom. So let me just stick this in. So my yarn keeps twisting, but you want to go through the middle, that empty hole, through your chain. So see how it's going right in the middle of that chain? Oh, sorry, I'm too close now. But there, my needle's right through the chain, and I am going to pull it, let go, and pull it until you create that chain right over there. It looks like a little eye with, you know, piece of string coming through. To do the next one, you go through the same hole. So the one you just came out of right here, you go down the same hole.
Darlene, you may need to back up just a little bit. You're losing focus there. Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry. So go down the same hole. Make sure this loop is open. Oh, there you go. So this one's better. So this the next empty hole. So not the hole you just came out, the next empty hole, you're going to come up right into your chains. So I'm not sure if you can see that. See how my needle's right in between that chain here? You want to come through. So when you do that, you're holding the chain against the string for it not to fall back down, and it just stays on the surface. So you're creating that same pattern. So once again, down the same hole you just came up. I just pull it so I can see this loop here. Enough for me to see the next empty hole, which is this one here. So the next empty hole, come right through your chain and pull. So this project also requires your tension. You don't want to pull too tight, so I did it on purpose right over here, that if you pull too tight, this is what happens. Your chain gets really squished up and you lose that chain look. It becomes a little blob. See how it goes chain, 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 and then tight, tight, tight. So I want to show you what it looks like if you pull too tight. But if you do it loosely, you keep that nice chain as if you're crocheting, because you know the chain look. You keep that nice chain all the way around. So here I am going through the hole I just came up, making sure my loop is visible, and then the next empty hole right through your chain and up. It looks confusing, but once you have this in your hands, and you can create the chain on anything. It works on this as well. You just need holes in particular order, and you can do a chain, heart, and stuff like that. So let me do it one more time, and then I'll show you some projects that I've done. So here, back in the same hole, and empty hole to go up inside my chain. So basically that chain is creating a knot on your thread, and then you should go all the way around. So this is something I just learned, and it looks pretty cool, different. And I would say move your arch, well, your rainbow with you. It just makes it easier. And that way your tension also stays consistent as you go all the way around. So let me just do one more here. Oops. So one thing, you could see that I need to pull because this end was getting caught, and back into that hole. And there you go. So that is the chain, which I wanted to show you. Pretty cool, different look, but that's another way to do this rainbow. So I like how there's two ways to do that. So I showed you heart. I showed you rainbow, but the fun thing is, let me show you some of the things you can do with this. So,
Darlene, sorry,
yes,
before you go on,
yep,
Adrian has an amazing tip about
yep,
paper. So she said that she's tried various weights and thicknesses of paper,
yes.
and it does lay flatter if you are using a thicker paper, but harder to die cut. So what she does is she cuts two in a
Mhm.
lighter weight and then glues them together. So that
Awesome.
way it's easy for die cutting, but then also easier and sturdier for sewing on.
Yeah, that's a
I
great
thought that was a
idea.
great tip. Thank
Yes,
you for
thank
sharing
you.
that, Adrian.
Love that tip. Okay, so when you're designing on these ones, I use my friend Pinterest. I would just search tiny cross stitch patterns and then try to figure it out. But another thing I did was I die cut meant because I have so many of these, I actually put it on an 8.5 by 11 and I photocopied it. And what I did was I cut it into little papers as if you're using those mathematical grids. I just wanted to show you. So I just cut them up. So I lined them up and I just cut them so I have the grids. And the reason why I photocopied these actual ones is so I had the correct numbers. I did take graph paper out and I try to design it. It took me longer because I had to count and make sure because this is a circle, your left and right, top and bottom all have different amounts. Some have only 4 squares and then the middle has like 17. So it was easier for me just to photocopy it. Yes, the word math, right? And just draw. So I was trying things out because I'm a big Lawn Fawn fan, and someone actually took a stamped image and stamped it. So that's what I did with this Lawn Fawn penguin, and I wanted to see how it works. It is tricky to stamp an image and try to design it. It did take some fiddling because this is paper. It's not as if we can do half stitches like as if you had an actual fabric, because when you have a fabric you can go through the middle and still be able to make your own half stitches or whole stitches. This one was a little bit tricky, so I did die cut. I did stamp a few. I only did one because I wasn't happy with the other, just to see if it would work. So here doesn't look the same, but I think it's okay. Like you could tell it's a penguin, can't you? But I did. So I basically took the image, I counted about how many spaces, and I had to build. So once I formed the body, I had to fill the spaces to get it even because I wasn't happy with the head. The head only had like one stitch line, and I felt like he needed a little bit more. So other ways to design your own is to stamp an image and try to execute and see if you can do the stitches. It won't look exactly the same, but if I didn't have this template on my piece of paper, I wouldn't know how to make a penguin. Like drawing is one thing, but you can always go to Pinterest or Google and just search it up. So the next thing I wanted to try, which I have not stitched yet, is I'm going to try more simple ones. So this dress is from their new release with the mice with the sewing is the dress. I want to see if that's easy. I think if I I actually stamped this on. So if I cross stitch the dress part, at least the stand is there and it will still make it look whole. Like the top part, all I have to do is really stitch the dress. So once I do that, I'll post it and see how it works. I'm just playing around with stamps because the next one I'm going to try is the Easter one. I was trying to pick bigger stamps because there's more coverage, and I think it's easier for me to estimate how many squares I would need to cover than something really tiny. Because I looked at this mice and I'm like, I don't think I can do it because it's too tiny, but I'll still try and I'll still show you. He is cute, but I'm already looking at the ears and I'm like, that's going to be hard because that would have to be whole X's, and that would be really tricky. So I think this might be a little bit better. But so that is one way you could do it. But if you like to draw and you like to stitch and you have inspiration, so here is a rubber ducky I did. So I drew it, I penciled it in. I'm not sure if you can see. And then I took my markers and colored in so that way I can tell how many X's I need to, cross stitches I need for yellow, how many for beaks. So this one I drew, and here it is. There's my little rubber ducky. So if you can draw, you can count, or don't be afraid to go to Pinterest and take ideas, but they have lots. So here's my duck. And I drew Yoda. So this one I did need some help on Pinterest. So there's Yoda. And so I just want to show you that if you can draw, there is my Yoda. Isn't he so cute? And this is just cross stitching, being able to count and just stitch. I did have to change some of the half stitches into whole stitches, but just to show you that it's possible. Or if you want to start simple, a little cake. And then, so as you can see, I purposely did leave a space here so I can write colors. Like something like this, I don't need to write colors because I can change the cake around. But something like this, and I love the colors I use, I would write the brand and the number if they have one. So that way, if I want to make multiples, then I can find them quickly or grab those colors and then put it in my to-go bag and then have it ready. So just wanted to show you some ideas like cakes for birthdays. And then I think I did one more swatch and the rest I did on my own. So a house, if you have a friend with a new home, but so creating it, which is kind of fun.
Darlene, I loved your suggestion that you gave to me as well for the perler beads.
Yes. The perler beads is another thing that you can search on Pinterest. And the reason why I say that is because they actually give you the amount of beads that you need to put in a row. So that will help you make stuff as well. So if you can't find, let's say if you can't find, you're trying to find a flower and you can't find it on a cross stitch because usually people that cross stitch are on bigger surfaces, then look at perler beads because they do it smaller scale for kids to do. So I found some of those helpful too. So going to perler beads, I found this tulips. This is supposed to be a butterfly. I still have to figure, I might just put one strand of black in the middle, but tulips. So just showing you that you can use the perler beads. I think they also call it pixel art also has. And I'll show you some of my favorites here. I'm a big fan of Cinderella. So here is my Cinderella. So wanted to show you different things that you can do, whether on this, circular one. Present. So here is just a present. And then, I'm missing one. So I did make, I guess I don't have it here. I did do a Captain America one for someone special. So she has that as a card. But here is Donald Duck. But endless, and it's fun. So once you gather your materials and you just count spaces, but there's Donald. I did Sanrio My Melody. And then, of course, I did Mickey and Minnie. So the possibilities there is just, if you love to cross stitch, there's so much you can do. And I think that's all. A lot of it I did duplicate and make many of them, but those are ones I don't think. And then I did a panda. My kids love pandas, so of course I had to do a panda one. But there you go, my friends. Just some samples of what you can do with any of these sets. Lots of fun. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Carol is asking, when you have finished a stitched piece, what do you do with them? Where do you put them?
So unfortunately, I've only made one card with them and I gave that away. But I put these collections, especially Lawn Fun was made for cards. So on card fronts and stuff like that, and you can use, which I love, which I did, was take the little mouse and you can have them stitching in stuff like that. So I will post the card that I made with Captain America. Another way I use stitching is in my traveler's notebook. I was going to bring it, but someone wanted to see it at the store, so it is at the store. But I do stitching in there as well. And one thing I want to do is with the Elizabeth Craft, even with the hoops, I actually wanted to use this on the actual base page. And I am going to stitch mom and use it as a Mother's Day page for me.
You can also use, so a few weeks ago, I showed on What's New the paper cut card panels that had the scalloped openings.
Yep.
You could use those as a frame over top of your stitching so that just your stitching pokes through the frame.
Yes. So lots of ways to use it. And I will hold on. Maybe I have another Captain America here. I did change the colors because I didn't like the way this one showed. I did change him lighter, but here, the stuff you can do. So there is the little guy. I think in the newer ones, I did move him more centered, but. So lots of fun. I will use them on card fronts. And then the thing is I think some of them I'm going to back it and use it as a tag. Yes, you can use it as Christmas ornaments. I did find like Santa and a snowman, and I did find a print of reindeers and stuff like that I want to do, but I'm kind of not ready for Christmas, so I didn't want to start stitching Christmas yet. So we'll start with this, once it becomes maybe July, then I'll start my Christmas stitching. But so I hope this helps you with a little bit of intro with the needles, the skeins, how many strands to use, the difference between cross stitch and the stitching dies. Quite fun depending on what you want to do, but I love cross stitching. I grew up with it, so this to me was a must-have, and Sherry and Matt know how obsessed I am with them.
Well, thank you so much, Darlene. This was a great, great session. For anybody who's out there who is looking to purchase either the Elizabeth Craft or the Lawn Fawn stitching dies, Elizabeth Craft is now in stock. Lawn Fawn is due to arrive tomorrow or Thursday. So just send us an email at the store. Let me see if I can find, here we go. The email address, give Darlene an email, and once those are in stock, she can let you know.
For sure.
Otherwise, have a wonderful evening, everyone, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you.